No, yeah, that's exactly how I feel about French and like any other language a lot of the time. But as Sofa King has told us, it is Milky Way in French. So that's where this name comes from. Very fun. Both teams went with like pretty like fancy feeling names today. Like I dig it though. I dig the like fancy pickup vibe.
I do as well, but you know what's fun is that Voie Lactee, like we said, is a lot of folks from Milky Way, hodgepodge of a lot of North American players. However, on the other side of the fence with Vacca, you got a pretty stacked team over there as well. You have some folks making their way from Celeste. You have a little bit of Vanguard sprinkled in there as well, and then you also have 100 Gex too coming from the US with Goss. So Robo Ramen is the stage that we're opening up the top cut of semifinals today, and Grace, as it goes in SendouQ, as always, we are in the counter-picking scenario. For those of you back at home that might be unaware and be like, hey, what the heck is a counter-pick? Well, let's say our friends on Vacca absolutely steamroll Voie Lactee in the opening statement here of Robo Ramen. That would mean that Voie Lactee would be the next to pick the counter-pick and pick their map that they would like to try and fight back Vacca on. And vice versa. If Vacca were to be the ones in the counter-picking seat, they would get to pick the next map that we are playing on. And we don't really have modes to worry about here, folks. It's splat zones all the way down.
And which is very, very popular. Of course, we've seen across the board. Folks, they've been calling for the abolishment, is that a word, of Rainmaker. Folks don't really like tower control. Clamlets is a lot. Splat zones is the way to go, and it's always that way with SendouQ finals. And I appreciate it, and I like it. For counter picks, though, I feel like we always see wild stuff. I think it's been a few times we saw a few teams counter pick to Hammerhead zones in SendouQ finales, which is crazy to me.
Love.
And earlier we saw a lot of Urchin, which makes a lot of sense because it was like the classic like Sendou matchup where it's like it staggers each team's picks, but it's not exactly counter picks. So going into this, I wonder if folks are like stalking whose each matchups were like for the maps of the previous in groups, and they're like, well, we can't go to Urchin because they really like Urchin. And I would be surprised if we saw Bluefin here, because that was quite devastating to see that earlier.
And you know, this conversation makes me think of Free Flow. Really wanting Free Flow to be here. Lumeria Hub. That is a Free Flow staple. Would love to see Lumeria Hub get chosen again as a counter pick for somebody. You'd be really making a call back to the folks over on Free Flow for that one. But I would agree with you, Grace. There's a lot of folks here that I think you have to be really mindful of what map you're picking. And especially I'm thinking of Shy Guys, the FT Win, Little Hodgepodge plus Zenith. Don't pick Urchin against those guys. I'm telling you right now, you have a lot of Splatoon 1 veterans, like seasoned veterans, over and over on the side of FT Win plus Zenith, or Shy Guy fans, if you will. But so that Urchin Underpass, maybe you might want to wait for a little bit later on that one. Might want to put a pin in that one for now.
Yeah, and thinking about, well, we've seen both of these teams already so far, which is very fun, and I like being able to stream a bunch of different teams and groups. But Voie Lactee, such a dominant display this entire time. Like, we saw Vacca drop some games here and there, of course, especially in their set against Shy Guy fans. But Voie Lactee only dropped one game, and it was in round 1. And in all the times that we've seen them, I was like typing in the chat like a little gremlin talking about their game style here. But I saw so many times them adapting, and I felt like I was seeing a little bit of that Splat World Series kind of mindset trickling in. Like, I saw them sharking and waiting for them to drop into them. I saw them taking up so much space, all these different angles. I think Voie Lactee is like the team to beat right now, especially after groups here. But Saf, these comps, similar to what we've been seeing, especially like Gray, who now has their name as Gray and not those like 50-11 dashes here on the S-Blast. But yeah, interesting comps right off the bat.
And I would expect nothing less from Grace, and especially with Q on that pencil as well. Literally, the comp from Voie Lactee is exactly what I would expect to come out on the center stage here for Robo Ramen. However, Vacca is the first to take the first word, and already 10 points, looking at 20 in the first 30 seconds.
Yeah, and I mean, already taking different angles, I'm kind of seeing from Vacca, Gray here, the jumping out is so crucial. It just lets you get all these different angles right after another. It's kind of like you're always in the game, even if you're out of position, you can just go jump right back here. But we're kind of seeing that overzealousness, kind of getting all those different angles, not really working out well to keeping the zone itself here for Voie Lactee. Vacca is going to be able to push up just a little bit, like with that wave breaker, being able to push back Voie Lactee into their spawn, these off angles against Soldier, again with the jumping out here, but Bran responding very well to this, being able to strike in, taking another angle, going off to the right, trying to get the zone, but the jumping, Saf, I'm telling you, so many jumps all the time.
But notice that they're not jumping out, like they're jumping in just somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to get too far out of the action because, I mean, what is one to do? If you're taking yourself out of the team fight, then that can only be a detriment to your team. Your team has to kind of carry a little bit more weight to wait for you to get back in for those few seconds, and every second matters, and especially in spot zones here. Already to about almost 2 minutes now down on the clock. You can see Voie Lactee is getting very comfortable in the zone. The lead flip has now changed. Crab Tank coming out on the center stage here. Jared also picking up a cooler on the way, taking one down with them, and a lot of assist damage too, opening the gateway for Bran, but unfortunate timing there. That's Vacca taking Bran out of the process. So trying to look and maybe see if they can re-enter with the cooler here, Grace.
Yeah, especially being coolered up, like the strikes coming out once again, might be able to cap with it, but Bran does not want to let them here, and especially Gray and Bran here going on a little bit of a two-man flank here. Oh, but Soldier completely takes them out there, Saf. I mean, the ledges when you're up against a slosher, even if you're a slosher yourself, and lining up next to each other. Listen, I like holding hands too, folks, but not like that against a slosher.
Yeah, narrow escape from Jared, too, on the Booyah Bomb. Not going to really find much value there, though, as they are now taken down by the Stamper player on Vacca. Vacca is going to utilize their resources and spread themselves out. Look at the tri-strikes coming out. The crab take from from Jared being eliminated out of the forefront. Gray's going to have to throw that Booyah Bomb in there, but it's not going to matter. The zone is still going to stay in Vacca's favor here. Gray trying to find some headway, pushing forward. The trade going down on the spawning side of Vacca, of Voie Lactee, and with the cooler coming out from Q here, this is finally going to be Voie Lactee putting a stop to this. 3 points in keeping these teams away from a tied setting. Grace, also pretty decent penalty for both teams.
Listen, there's a reason this match is happening here in Top Cut. There's a reason why SendouQ put them in different groups here. This is it. This is the center stage, like you've been saying, and they're so evenly matched. I mean, you can see all of the aggression kind of coming out here. They're it's like a 2v2 situation at all times here. The sprinklers putting in work. Love Q there especially too. Keeping this zone flipped in Voie Lactee's favor here, and they are taking down some points here. They're actually scoring, not just penalty as well here, but the strikes are coming out. That's definitely going to get them out of the zone here. And unless they can somehow hold it from other angles, and no, they're just going to go 2 down here, Saf. I mean, Vacca, again, so much back and forth in this last minute here. They have to have a firmer hold on here. They can't let Voie Lactee get back in here because they need to take down these penalty points.
Yeah, and I think Voie Lactee is reading exactly what you're putting down, Grace. That Booyah Bomb's going to go out onto the corner of Vacca. All 4 members getting pushed back. Soldier even actually having to jump down into the bottom area there, and giving the zone freely back to Voie Lactee. Not really much space to work with if you're Vacca. However, a response of their own with, I think that was a Booyah Bomb and some tri-strikes coming out from Vacca to try to push back in against Voie Lactee. This is just a very tit-for-tat kind of match. It's kind of like, okay, you come in and take our penalty away, we'll get a point. You come in, take the penalty away, okay, we'll get a point. And it's just kind of, it's going to really just come down to like who is going to get that really big game-winning play to kind of close it all out.
Yeah, and I mean, the crab's going to come out from Jared, and I mean, it's going to be rolling around saying this way for some kind of help here, and I mean, it is so close for them to get any more points on the board here, but I don't think Voie Lactee is going to let them have it. They do go 1 down. I think Jared just got picked off, but Gray's going to get a huge pick. I mean, their chargers down, their buckets down. That means no strikes here. Going into these last few seconds, they're going to get a wipe, which basically secures their win here. Voie Lactee going up 1-0, which means that Vacca is going to get the first counter pick of the set.
And already, just first game between your first and second seed in this matchup, Grace. it was back and forth the entire time. Is that setting the stage for how the entirety of the rest of the set is going to be? Who is to say? But it goes to show that there's a reason that these two folks are your top two teams in this finale, right? Because that is the kind of gameplay that they are going to show you. They're going to make it a back and forth fight, and they're going to actually drag out the 5 minutes plus a little bit extra in order to determine the winner. And I'd imagine even with the counter pick, regardless of what Vacca is going to decide here, Voie Lactee is still going to give them a run for their money.
Yeah, and thinking about, like I said, I like hyped up Voie Lactee going into this about like how dominant they've been this entire tourney, but Vacca had them shaking in their boots, if I dare may say. I feel like we weren't really seeing. I feel like the entire game I never saw a strong hold, like a strong lockout situation. It felt like they were always poking holes in each other's defenses, which meant the zone was just flipping constantly, and a lot of that like tit for tat, like you talked about. But I mean, with Robo Ramen, everyone's just so comfortable on it. It feels like a lot of folks, it can be their safe pick a lot of the time too. And especially with sloshers, like the angles, the ledges, it just felt like a good map for both of them here. So I'd be interested if Vacca picks something weird or out of the ordinary, or just something they feel more comfortable on so that they can actually get a leg up against Voie Lactee here. And that being Crab Leg Capital. Oh my gosh, Saf, I gotta keep yapping. We just saw Voie Lactee on stream there in groups on crab leg zones, and it was like perfectly done. Like no notes. It was, I mean, their opponents couldn't get in. There was that moment I talked about where Gray was like sitting there waiting for them to drop, and then as soon as they dropped, they let their position be known, and that's a lot of what we saw in SWS. So I feel like Vacca might be playing a little bit into Voie Lactee's kind of hand here, but they must have a plan if they pick this. So
you'd have to think, right? It's like the discussion was had and it's on the screen, so clearly there is like some consensus here that this is correct and like that we know what we want to try to accomplish. But I agree with you. It's kind of looking actually at the group stage choices again. So Voie Lactee 0'd and 3'd against EasyMD. Completely took EasyMD out in their one pool match against them. However, EasyMD was second in the pool in that group. And then you have Vacca, who I believe was did first on the other side. Hold on. My internet's taking a while to load this bracket. It's like,
Sendou did just crash before this. The magnitude of this tournament and the players were too strong.
That's true. That's true. Sendou did have just a little bit of a moment. A breakdown moment. Yeah, so Shy Guy fans on the other side of the bracket went 5-0. Vacca on the other side was the second place spot in the other group. So sitting similarly to EasyMD in terms of win ratio here. But I think that Vacca is going to have a couple of tricks up their sleeve as well. You got to be watching out for where Solja is going to be. Solja is like the most hyper mobile bucket I have been seeing just so far today out of everybody that's playing bucket, which you have a lot of strong bucket players here, Grace, on the roster. So like, don't get me wrong here, but I think Solja so far has been the most hyper mobile bucket that we've been seeing. I mean, consistently jumping out, taking a position, and then getting out as soon as they can, just making sure that they're making the most of their life as they possibly can before finding themselves in a sticky situation. But I think already for starters here, we're seeing the kind of the stage being set like last time. Vacca is the first to make the first move.
Yeah, and I mean, kind of responding to that, Voie Lactee is doing a really good job of poking in at where those defenses are. Not that I say that they are going to explode in front of us here, but still, Q holding strong, trying to get some paint down for their teammates here as well. But, and I mean, yeah, as you see, this kind of thing happens a lot, where the second you get a little bit overzealous, the second you're like, oh, I can take some wiggle room and go with it, Voie Lactee punishes you for it. It's kind of like they flow around you and flow around the places that you're trying to go and break in through, and they just use that to their advantage here. But kind of still looking at the score, looking at the positions that they're trying to get into here. Gray going for a little bit of a flank, jumping out though, like we've been seeing here. Brand still going down though, Saf. I mean, Voie Lactee has to try to get into the zone here, but they're in an effective stagger, and they have been staggering, I mean, the first minute of this match so far.
Yeah, I think Voie Lactee though is having some trouble getting down into the bottom stage here. It seems like they're getting a little bit cornered onto the side. Maybe some breakout power here though, with Bran providing those tri-strikes and Q following up too and allowing a bit of a pathway to get back to the zone. Voie Lactee now taking zone into possession. All members of the Vacca are up on the platform. One of them trying to jump down, unfortunately falling into the jaws of Bran and Gray combined. And maybe some other folks of Vacca are trying not to make the same mistake. And actually, it's not going to be Soldier that's going to make the mistake, because that is a win for Soldier on the bucket fight, and Tri-Strike going to come out and do the same thing. We're going to see a flip of the script from Vacca.
Yeah, but I mean, they... Oh, wait. I was about to say they weren't really able to cap the zone, and they still don't. Still being 2 down here. The members of Voie Lactee, Gray being able to clutch out that kill, which is awesome, too, to maintain their hold here. But they kind of let them come into the zone, and then I think they collapsed back in on them from the sides there. It kind of felt like they let Vacca play into their hand because that's what they wanted them to do, and they didn't go down numbers despite giving up some of that space and some of the paint on the zone here. Voie Lactee here going into the last few seconds. I mean, the strikes are coming out though, and being 2 down, Voie Lactee, they can't contest the zone, and it's just going to flip for Vacca.
I really appreciated Bran playing those strikes patiently, to kind of just holding on to them and letting the clock run itself out for a little while longer. However, Vacca having strikes up their sleeve just as easily here. But still, Vacca not finding headway on the zone, not for very long anyways, because Voie Lactee is already there to make the response to the call. And once again, we're seeing a similar situation. All 4 members of Vacca absolutely trapped onto the platform here and taking Soldier out too. Keeping a cap on that hypermobile bucket and forcing all the rest of the players of Vacca to stay on the platform where the E-leader also is not finding as much value as they could. It's looking so good for Voie Lactee here.
Yeah, and I mean, despite them going down numbers, they still have a good presence in mid. Like, it's really, really interesting. And I always like to, like, toot people's horns when they're able to do this, though. Like, kind of when they allow people to take that space without giving up their own space, if that makes sense. And I always think that's really, really impressive here. But Voie Lactee, even the king sometimes must fall a little bit here, and they do give up a lot of room here. They're gonna have to back up all the way to their plat, and I mean some jump outs, some kills here as well, but they have a lot of time to work with here. Vacca has a good hold though. I mean, you kind of see them sharking around these boxes, playing with the ledges, playing with Voie Lactee's kind of eyesight of them. And if you don't know where the opponent is, you can throw as many strikes in as you want, and you can cop the zone, but they're still up. A lot of the members of Vacca are still up, and they are going down numbers here, again, with Jared, with that crab, but they're going to jump out to kind of still keep their special charge up to hopefully make a little bit of a comeback here.
Yeah, and look at Jared and Bran absolutely forcing Soldier to try to get out of the fighting zone here. All 3 members of the Voie Lactee that are more mobile are up and trying to take and see if they can take the fights to Vacca's doorstep here. But with, unfortunately, 2 members going down, but we're in the final 30 seconds of the round. Grace tri-strikes coming out for Vacca. Vacca needs to try to utilize these last 30 seconds as best as they can and play to their advantage, and don't even try to go for the trades. It's not going to be worth it for you. But all the way over on the right-hand side with Soldier taking out Bran, going in to fight Jared and completely forcing Jared to have to ball up into Crab and retreat. Vacca has the tools for success to try and delay any specials coming out from Voie Lactee.
That was so smart. They split up. Soldier went up to kind of fight for their charger there so that they could maintain the zone, you know, a little bit contest the players running at them. But then Soldier ran at Bran and Jared on that crab, and Jared had to forego even using the crab to run away in the ball form. So smart here. But you can see Voie Lactee here. They are going to go down numbers, which makes their strikes not come out super kind of how they want them to here. Soldier is down. But are the members of Voie Lactee going to be able to get into the zone? I think it hinges off the crab and the picks from this crab. They aren't able to get one, and they get pressured, and then they go down here. Saf, the Booyah Bomb coming out as well. Another Booyah Bomb coming out. Q is dropping, trying to make something happen, but no. I mean, it's a 2v2 situation here. Gray and Jared kind of tag teaming the zone, but they can't get it. Oh my gosh, Saf, major comeback from Vacca. They're going to tie this set up 1-1.
Dude, I wish we had replays. I want to go back and slow down those last 15 seconds, because that was a long overtime fight, y'all. That didn't seem long from us sitting here in the bleachers, but like for the players, that was a very long overtime fight. That really not ideal for Voie Lactee, I think. I think if Voie Lactee has to be pushed into an overtime scenario like that, I think it really puts a lot of pressure on them to try to perform. And I feel that Vacca really honed into that. And not to say locked in, but they were tuned in as well. There's a difference. You can be locked in all you want, but if you're not tuned in at the same time, then it doesn't really matter. Like, you're not going to be performing your best. And I feel in those last bits of overtime, Vacca was not only locked in, but they were tuned in as well. Pushing Voie Lactee into this type of overtime situation, I think, is going to be the key to success.
Very, very true here. And I mean, okay, Saf, I was talking about Vacca taking out a bit of a crazy pick to try to throw off Voie Lactee on their game. I think Voie Lactee just threw me off my game, because what do you mean we're going to be playing Flounder Heights? Splat zones on Flounder Heights. I mean, it makes a lot of sense, like with the whole Slosher thing going on, with the S-Blast thing going on too, but
against Vacca?
Like, no, exactly, like Solja, like it literally just happened earlier where I think it was Bran and Gray holding hands on Ramen, and then Solja got a double on them. I feel like that is so tough, but maybe they're like trying to style on them. They're like calling their bluff, and they're like, no, actually we have the better Slosher here because we're gonna pick Flounder Heights confidently.
I know, and I'm wondering, I'm like, is that a choice from Bran? Was Bran like, do this? I'm telling you right now.
No, I'll win.
Hold on. Let me cook here. Let me just kind of like start prepping my ingredients here. Give me Flounder Heights, and I promise you we will find success here. Also, double zone map. Haven't seen a double zone map yet so far in this semifinals round. How do we handle double zone maps, Grace? It's kind of a big question, right? And especially when you get into the higher level, into the big leagues, how do you diversify your resources? How do you categorize? How do you fill the queue with what needs to happen first, with responsibilities, with priorities? What do you prioritize? Obviously, maybe it's the zone that's closest to you. That would make the most sense. However, I think that actually going for the opposer's zone should be top priority first, because if you can actually just downplay immediately what that interest is going to be, I have a feeling that success is going to follow you in its wake.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. And especially with like the Slosher, it is just so good to kind of get up on those walls. But then again, going into a Slosher themselves, you can't really miss any steps at all here. Gray here, overextending to try to get a kill there onto Solja. Again, a key player here for this map mode specifically, and we've been seeing this entire set though, getting punished for it. And I mean, talking about which zones to prioritize here, either team is not able to really crack any just yet here. And I think that has to do with a lot of the high grounds, like you see, you're not really able to approach that leader. Bran doing the jump in to get that kill on the Slosher again. So good, so crucial here. But again, neither team's really able to crack these points, get any points on the board at all.
I know, and look at the equivalent exchange of backline and where they are, except that's going to be Jared pulling the crab in the forefront, telling Q to kind of take cover. The Booyah Bomb's going to come out and try to force Jared away from that back end. They're also pushing Q forward a little bit as well. However, I think that was actually Vacca's downfall, because that caused two members of Vacca to go down, and Voie Lactee now having a lot more space to work with to push around here. Jared is hunting for the members of Vacca, trying to look and see if they can find a pick somewhere. All four members trying to come up the ramp here and see if they can change the story of what's going on, with Bran launching tri-strikes as well. I think Vacca's having a little trouble trying to find their footing. And also, okay, there we go. I was like, who's got the zone? My gosh.
And especially with two zone maps, if there's like a little sprinkle of paint, it just kind of neutralizes, and then it's so easy to flip here. Wait, Solja going onto the flank, trying to get a huge pick onto Q. Do they get it? Perhaps the Booyah Bomb coming in for the assist here. They ran Q down, and they weren't able to get the pick there. That was such a good misdirect, kind of like being a distraction from Q as the backline. That was so smart, because it made Solja completely out of the game, which allowed Voie Lactee to keep this zone here, all the way taking down to about 50 remaining, yes. And the members of Vacca are staggering. I mean, they can't really get back into the zone. They're going to be coolered up, sure, but Q is watching it like a hawk, Saf. I mean, this looks really good for Voie Lactee here.
Yeah, the continuation of keeping Solja out of the game has caused Voie Lactee to keep on these points. And look at this. They all are trying to come up to this ramping point, and Q has been standing in that area the whole time being like, okay, once again, no. Once again, no. And they're all still pushed over onto their zone. They've barely made headway even onto Voie Lactee's zone. And we're in the single-digit points here. Finally, that Booyah Bomb is going to cause a little bit of damage. 2 members of Voie Lactee going down. Can Vacca actually turn this around? Still, finally, members of Voie Lactee getting a taste of their own medicine and getting staggered out of the zone. That is Vacca, with finally at the 2-minute mark.
Yeah, and I mean, we can already see Gray is looking for a little bit of some wiggle room there. Gray and Brand being a little bit of like a power duo here, being able to try to get up onto this wall. But them taking out Q is so crucial. And thank you to Justin for catching that there, because that's going to give them a lot of space to work with already. And I mean, Jared's going to go down. That's the Crab, key player in kind of getting back into that zone here. But 3 of them are going to go down here. Q left to fend for herself here, going to have to back all the way up. And the members of Vacca are coolered up here, Saf. Now, they have to do what was once done onto them and try to get back into the zone with the cooler, with any more tools they have in their tool shed here.
Yeah, and now with Soldier being the bucket to on the high ground to look out for it, they're going to actually opt to take Jared out of the fight before they get anything started. Make it almost true with Gray as well. Actually make it true. Brand is also trying to bide their time on the side and poke around against them. But now losing control, finally, they're like, you know what? We have to actually focus zone now. We can't be wasting any more of our resources trying to climb up. But it's not going to matter, Grace. That's Vacca pushing Voie Lactee into the counter picking seat once again.
I am jaw dropped. That was nuts. Soldier was literally in love with that wall, pocking so many shots above it, getting so many fall off shots.
Barely human is right.
And it was like the members of Voie Lactee, I couldn't quite see what was happening on the left side, but I can only imagine that they were purposefully funneling them into Vacca, onto Soldier, on that wall, so that was the only angle they could take. So then if you're forced into one area and you know you're forcing them into one area and you have such a strong hold over it, Voie Lactee, I mean, what can you even do?
I think Voie Lactee got too tunnel visioned onto climbing onto that wall that Soldier was guarding. I think that there was too much effort put into that, because you'll notice that once Bran was like, okay, let me redirect, and they just tried climbing back towards the zone, immediately zone was taken out of possession for Vacca. So I think, again, keeping a cap and control on where Soldier is at and where they're going to be. But also, if Soldier is going to just stand firm and maintain a whole area, then maybe it's like, okay, we have to redirect and we just have to go for zone. And I think that they just spent a little bit too long trying to break into that point, because I mean, obviously Bucket with right there on that wall is going to have so much advantage with anybody trying to even climb up there, no matter what you try to do. Because there's not really much you can do. Like, even if you're throwing a sub or something, like, that's not really going to help you that much, and it still leaves you vulnerable trying to climb over that wall. So now with Voie Lactee on the counter-picking seat, Grace, we can't choose the high ground. I don't think the high ground is it for Voie Lactee in this one, which maybe might be a little bit of a different taste for them. I'd wager.
That is so true. And I'm gonna act like oh, never mind. Justin already did it up. I saw it on the side and I was like, oh my god, it's gonna be Haggle. What if I pretend I predicted it was gonna be Haggle? But no, I can't be a liar today. But going to Hagglefish, I think you're totally right about the high ground thing. I think Voie Lactee is kind of going for the what's the right word? Leaning into what's been doing well for them, which is Jared on that crab as well. Like, if Bran is like, guys, my bad, I did not diff Soldier that match. They were like, all right, well, we can lean back into the crab. We can lean back into Q on that sniper rider as well. So quick, did they insta ready up here like that? They immediately knew what they wanted to do here. And the worms in my ear are telling me, yes, they did indeed ready up immediately here. So again, comps pretty similar. Basically what we were expecting here, but I think that tent area is going to be the place to control here. I wouldn't be surprised if all of Vacca's specials, those strikes and those Booyah bombs, go to getting Q out of that tent.
Yeah, and let's talk about Bran just for a second there. Bran pushed all the way up to try to infiltrate and then actually was like, you know what? That's a little too far for me, and ended up jumping back. They do allow the Vacca to make the first push and taking the zone at first. However, I think Voie Lactee biding their time, that's actually exactly what they wanted. They were fine with Vacca trying to come in and swinging hard first, because that allows for Voie Lactee to come in and swing even harder. That's one going down, making it to Voie Lactee now infiltrating into the side of Vacca.
Could have sworn Jared was going to get a double there with that crab, and I'm surprised that they didn't, though. But it pretty much did what they wanted them to do anyways, although they didn't get any picks quite. Voie Lactee still having a good control of the zone here, but with, I mean, the strikes, I think that was both teams striked on the zone there, combined with the Booyah Bomb here. They're trying to get a little bit of an off angle here, trying to push in both from mid and from this right flank here. But with Jared on that crab, holding down the main road, they take out the flank that was happening there on the right. And although Q does go down, the members of Voie Lactee hold strong, and they're going to be able to push up a little bit here to maybe lock out the members of Vacca. I see Gray here trying to go for a little bit of that, I think. No.
Yeah, I think they were, but yeah, just a little bit too close. Just like Brand, like right in the first 5 seconds, they were like, oh, too fast, gotta back up. And I think that Voie Lactee is just trying to play into speed. They're chomping at the bit to try to make the plays that they want, but they're finding Grace. They're finding themselves pushing up too fast. They're like, oh, I'm here too quickly. I need to readjust. And I think it's kind of making things a little challenging, I think, for Voie Lactee to get it together. So now you have Vacca in the driver's seat again, and you have actually the Stamper getting a really good position pushing up there. Jared is hopefully maybe going to utilize the crab and try to pigeonhole the members of Vacca into a corner here, but still painting the front of the zone, but it's not going to be enough because Vacca with the zap is going to be right there to cover up the mess.
I completely agree with you there that, like, a lot of the time when you get picked off or when you find yourself out of position, it's because there's a disconnect between what you think the current state of the game is versus your teammates, or just what it is, period. Like, a lot of that can be said with the pushing up too soon, the not pushing up soon enough, the going for zone, but then the alleys aren't covered. They aren't ready for you to go in yet. And I think that's always what these top players and what these top teams, like at like the high level thinking about this game, are what they're always thinking about here. So that's why the jumping out is so helpful, because it kind of curbs that over enthusiasm or, you know, inability to kind of get a temperature check for where we are in the state of the game yet. But going back into the game here, stop talking about the kind of convoluted game mindset stuff here. Vacca has a good hold in the zone, and I mean, Gray is going to get a huge pick, though, trying to threaten the zone a little bit, and they're going to take out the Booyah Bomb here, Saf. I mean, that's one, that's going to be a comeback if I've ever seen one.
Yeah, and speaking of temperature earlier, Grace, things for Vacca were kind of heating up there for a bit, but I think Voie Lactee was there to kind of turn the thermostat down. They touched the thermostat and didn't tell Dad that they did so. So Vacca's coming back in with a vengeance to tap the zone again. Two members of Voie Lactee going down, trying to find re-entry. Gray is going to have to back up, but not a moment too soon. They are also taken down. The tri-strikes for Vacca are going to open up the spawning area here, trying to break in and throw in some paint. There's not really too much with Voie Lactee with what they're throwing down, and honestly, this wave breaker has been quite the thorn in Voie Lactee's side, if I do say.
Definitely, and I'm noticing so much this game particularly that no one's really overextending to do a lockout. Like, they're always positioning their defense just around the zone. They're not even going to overextend into their spawn to try to make something happen, to try to completely lock them out and spawn camp them or something, because they know better. And I mean, that kind of just goes to show how different of a game Splat Zones is compared to other modes as well, which makes sense why we're doing only Splat Zones here. But going into this last minute, less than last minute here, so many picks are flying out. Vacca here going as close into their spawn as we've seen this entire time. Soldier opting to jump out. They were like, never mind.
Again, the excitement, a little overzealous, finding themselves in danger, and being like, okay, I gotta leave. But that like split-second risk assessment is like something that you will only find at this level. I think that where someone can really weigh the odds of like 3 different scenarios that are happening at once. But talk about weighing the scenarios of 3 different things at once. I don't think anybody was expecting this, but Voie Lactee is now knocked out of the competition for the finale. That is your first seed getting knocked out by the second seed. Vacca is punching their ticket to the finals.
Such a strong display from them. Like, you know, especially with counter picks, it's a little awkward if you're the one not on the back foot there, because then you have to just constantly be playing into your opponent's hands. But Vacca really showing what they're made of. And I think, like you said, it was just they played so flowy, like they played so malleable, and
So
I think
flowy.
that's what got them so flowy. I think that's what ultimately got them the win. Like the jumping out, we saw a million times. I mean, really, really smart, really, really good showing from them here.
No, 1000%. I agree with you entirely. I really think that the flow state of play that was coming from the Vacca, the amount of jumping out, the amount of like very, very early risk detection and assessment was so good. But Grace, I really think that it toppled in that overtime match against Voie Lactee. I think that's really where Voie Lactee saw things fall apart, and that's where the breakdown was initiated, because when you put yourself in such a high pressure system like that, and you have the overtime last for as long as it did, I mean, it was just everything in the kitchen sink to try to cover up the zone and to do what they could. And I think that expended the amount of the energy reserve that Voie Lactee was going to try to spread out throughout the whole semifinals match, because you slowly kind of like, they put up a fight, like they did, but you slowly kind of saw things deteriorate after that match from Voie Lactee. Even when they were like supposedly on the counter pick and thought that they were being advantageous about it, even their counter picks just did not work out for them. For three times in a row. 3 times in a row, the counter pick just did not work.
I know.
A lot of notes. I think a lot of notes to be taken for Voie Lactee against for this match here. A VOD to watch back, I think.
A VOD to watch back, many a replay codes. But I mean, just thinking about it again here, like this is like the best of the best, which I think is always so fun about the SendouQ finales.